Hi everyone, hope you're having a good Thursday. Here's my audience. If you could turn the camera around, please. Okay. The great Karl Lagerfeld once said, "What I like about photographs is that they capture a moment that's gone forever, impossible to reproduce." Over the past several years, I've taken photos all over the United States, and I've picked up a few tricks along the way in my travels. I also have extensively researched how to take better photos in all conditions. Manual mode has often been touted as being too difficult or complicated for beginner photographers. Together, we can break that narrative and take better photos together. So, we're going to take a look at what your aperture, shutter speed, and ISO are, and how they can help you to take better photos. So we'll take a stop at the first building block of taking better photos, which is the aperture. The aperture serves two main purposes. It controls the amount of light let in through the camera lens and the depth of field or the blurriness behind the object that you're shooting. So, let's start with the amount of light. The amount of light that's let in is let in through the opening of your lens, or the aperture. It is normally measured in f-stops, so between f1.2 and f22. Some lenses will be higher and some lenses will be lower. Nisim Menshurov of Photography Life once explained it as the pupil for your camera system. And as your pupil opens and closes to let in more light, so does your camera. Generally, the way that you want to think about it is the lower the light, the lower the f-stop number that you want. And here's an example of a lower light shot at f1.4. And it can also control the depth of field. The depth of field is how blurry an image is in the background. This also creates an effect that a lot of photographers like to call bokeh. The way that you want to think about it is the lower the f-stop number, the more blurry the depth of field is. Whereas the higher the number, you'll be able to see more in the background. One issue that you can run into when you are shooting at a low f-stop number is you can be less sharp. So the image overall will be less sharp and less crisp as when you're shooting at a higher f-stop. So here we can see a few examples. This is at f1.4. You can see the background is pretty blurry. And then this is what the image was actually taken at night. And then here you can see at f22, you can actually see all the details and the trees behind it and everything like that. So now let's move to the next building block, the shutter speed. The shutter speed is how long you open or close the shutter of your camera, and it determines the amount of light that's let into your image sensor. It allows you to take photos in most conditions and most f-stops. So if you wanted to take a photo at f1.2 during the day, you won't have any issues doing that because you can set your shutter speed super fast. So now that we know what the shutter speed is, how long should we set it? Shutter speed is normally measured in seconds. On most cameras, it's between 1/4000th and 30 seconds, or you can do what's called bulb, which is just however long you want to hold it down for. Generally, 1/4000th is during the day, during bright conditions, and 30 seconds would be you want to take photos at night and you want to capture the stars or something like that. The way you want to think about it is the longer that you have the shutter open, the more light you're going to let in. Some issues that you can introduce when you keep your shutter open for too long is camera shake. As your hands hold the camera, it can move it, and then the image will become blurry. You can also overexpose or underexpose your photos, which means they're too bright or too dark. You generally want to go for overexpose because you can always darken a photo more than bring more light into a photo. So here you can see an example of a shutter speed that was set for too long and my hands moved and it's all blurry and it's a little bit too bright. So next we move to the ISO. The ISO enhances the brightness of an image. So what it does is it takes the light information that is coming in and it just raises it more and more and more the higher you set it. It was originally set by the International Organizations for Standards, also known as ISO, for film cameras. Film cameras, you couldn't change the ISO and they were always set. On normal cameras today, you can change them. You have your base ISO, which is 100, and you can go all the way up to 26,000, which is pretty bright and most people won't really use. It allows you to shoot at a more optimal aperture and shutter speed. So if you wanted to shoot kind of at dusk and you wanted to shoot f10 so you can get the nice background of an image, and then you don't want to set your shutter speed so long that it becomes very shaky, you can up the ISO. Some ISO misconceptions. Kevin McLinn of the Outdoor Photography School states that ISO settings other than base ISO do not change the detector settings, the detector being the image sensor itself. A lot of people think that when you raise the ISO, it makes it more sensitive to light, and that's not true. It's just bringing in more light to the photo. Film camera ISO and DSLR camera ISO are not the same. Film camera is the actual sensitivity to light, and DSLR is the addition of light, bringing it in. It also does not create noise. A lot of people will say that it creates noise. That does not happen. The noise is already there. All you're doing is amplifying it. And it does not make your images look less sharp like aperture does. So, what have we learned together? We've learned our aperture and how to take photos in low light and in a little bit tougher conditions. We also learned how to blur out your background. We learned your shutter speed and how you can pick it based on your aperture to bring in more light into your photos. And we learned your ISO so that you can set your shutter speed and aperture to whatever you really want to, and you can still have enough light. Thank you.